In British politics, we are living through the long aftershot of the Johnson catastrophe, the stained sofa of history. And his rise was not an accident of personality, but the product of a system curated by a small, well-connected circle who learnt that a chaotic, rule-breaking populist could be weaponized to win elections. And when that experiment blew up, as it was always destined to, the same machine didn't dismantle itself, it simply looked for a new vessel, and that vessel, to the horror of anyone who cares for public life, is Nigel Farage. Farage didn't emerge from the shadows unaided. He has benefited from an extraordinary campaign of sanitisation, particularly from broadcasters who once affected disdain for his antics. Johnson's buffoonery was framed as charm. Farage's demagoguery is recast as candour. You can almost hear the click of the same PR Rolodex turning. The same publishers who burnished Johnson's image have been rolled out again. The same lobbyists who excused Johnson's lies, evasions, casual cruelty are back, determined to present Farage as an outsider, even as they lay out the red carpet of insider privilege beneath his feet. It is not conspiratorial to observe such patterns. The vested interests who enjoyed the tax breaks, deregulation, ideological cover that Johnson provided have no intention of relinquishing influence. They need a new frontman. Farage is their choice, and they are working furiously to make him respectable, electable, inevitable, probably because they realise generic doesn't work. The public, however, is not powerless. And here we arrive at the crucial question. With 5 main parties, as opposed to 2, can tactical voting stop Farage? According to the most rigorous polling analysis available, the answer is an emphatic yes. In fact, tactical voting is now the single most important barrier between Britain and a reform-led government. Peter Kellner's recent moulding is devastating in its clarity. If voters behave as they tell pollsters they intend to, if they vote not for a perfect candidate, but for the candidate most likely to stop the one they fear, reform collapses. The YouGov projection, which on a straight reading suggests a reform landslide of over 300 seats, becomes something very different under that sort of selective polling, selective voting, tactical voting. Once tactical voting is applied, reform falls back by at least 100 seats. They are nowhere near a majority. The right, even when Conservatives are added, is overtaken by the centre and the left combined. Farage's path to number 10 becomes a labyrinth with no exit. This is not an abstract calculation. It reflects a profound shift in public understanding of our electoral system. Voters have finally grasped what politicians have known for decades. First past the post is a game of second choices, defensive strategies, and disciplined coalitions. The days of tribal loyalty are ending. People will vote Labour to stop reform. They will vote Lib Dem to stop reform. They will vote Green to stop reform. Even many Conservatives will, in extremis, vote Labour rather than deliver Downing Street to Farage. This matters because the threat is real. At Westminster, the prospect of Farage running the government is taken with absolute seriousness. Labour's recent lurches, the asylum announcements, the hard-edged rhetoric, the panic-stricken triangulation, are born of fear. Ministers know that the complacency that once defined opposition to Farage has evaporated. They can read polls, they can read the calendar, they can see what could happen if an anti-Farage vote fragments. The tragedy is that we have been here before. Britain elected Boris Johnson because elites misjudged the public appetite for spectacle. Johnson's fabrications at the Times should have ended his career before it began. Instead, they became the first stepping stone in a journey that led to tens of thousands of avoidable COVID deaths. The hollowing out of standards, the erosion of public trust, the cleaning of the sofa. He was protected by newspapers that depended on him and donors who expected returns. We are now watching the same story being queued up for a second performance. The only difference is that this time the protagonist is even more divisive and the consequences are potentially worse. This isn't about staining the sofa, this is about skinny dipping off Brighton. And here is the counterpoint that should steady the nerves. If tactical voting reaches even half the levels the polling suggests, the Farage project will stall. He will win on a fractured opposition. He cannot win when the country votes with a shared purpose. Tactical voting becomes the electorate's quiet veto, a constitutional safety valve in a system that otherwise rewards fragmentation and punishes moderation. Britain is not condemned to repeat the Johnson era, nor must it submit to a Farage government, engineered by a small cadre of well-connected. The future is not predetermined. It will be shaped by where the voters understand the arithmetic, the stakes, and the urgency. If they do, Farage doesn't take power. If they do not, the consequences will be as grave as those of 2019, perhaps worse. The real question is not whether the machine is trying to manipulate the electorate. It always has been. The question is whether the electorate is willing to outsmart the machine. And this time, for the sake of the country, it must. This time, for the sake of the country, we must look to those websites that talk about tactical voting and work out who will keep reform, who will keep Farage out in the cold.